In general task 1, you have to write a letter. Now, this might be a formal letter, an informal letter, or a semi-formal letter. Let me explain the differences. So formal letters we typically write to people that we don't know. For example, when we're writing to a train company, or perhaps we're writing about some lost property. Informal letters are written to people we know, like friends and relatives. And then there's this awkward category, semi-formal letters. So I would say we write semi-formal letters to people that we know, but we don't have a close relationship with. For example, maybe your employer or your children's teacher. Now, some IELTS teachers don't teach semi-formal letters. They just say focus on formal and informal letters, and that's totally fine. However, I'd say it's worth paying attention to semi-formal letters, but think of them as being very similar to formal letters, but with a few differences, which we'll look at in today's lesson. This is what General Training Task 1 looks like. At the top, we've got the time. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. Then we've got the prompt. So this gives the context of the letter. Then we've got who we're writing the letter to. So in this case, we're writing to an accommodation officer. So would you write a formal, an informal, or a semi-formal letter? I would write a formal letter because it's someone that we don't know. Below that, we have the 3 bullet points. Now, there are always 3 bullet points, and I would recommend writing about each of these in separate paragraphs. Then we have the word count, write at least 150 words. Some of you will be writing way over 150 words, like 250 words. That's fine, just don't go below. And then we have the instructions. You do not need to write any addresses. And then we've got the opener. So in this case, because it's a formal letter, it starts, Dear Sir or Madam. Let's practice identifying formal, informal, and semi-formal letters. So if you got this question, what kind of letter would you write? Formal, informal, or semi-formal? You can pause the video now. The answer is here. Write a letter to your friend, so it must be informal. What about this one? You can pause the video. Write a letter to your employer. So it's someone you know, but you don't know them well. I would suggest writing a semi-formal letter. What about this one? Write a letter to the train company. It's someone you don't know, so I would write a formal letter. Now, regardless of whether you're writing a formal, informal, or semi-formal letter, the structure will be the same. You're always going to start with a greeting. So that's going to be something like, Dear Sir or Madam. And then you're going to have an opener, which gives the purpose of the letter. So it will look something like, I am writing this letter to let you know about. And then we're going to deal with the 3 bullet points in separate paragraphs. We're going to have a closer, which is going to be something like, please consider my situation and let me know. And then we're going to have a sign off, which is where you say something like, yours faithfully, John Doe. So that would be if it's a formal letter. If it's informal, you might say something like, all the best, John. Okay, so remember, all letters have the same structure. They have the greeting, the opener, the 3 bullet points, the closer, and the sign-off. However, there are differences between formal, semi-formal, and informal letters. Let's look at them now. So the first difference is with the greeting. In formal letters, you're going to say something like, Dear Sir or Madam. In semi-formal, Dear Mr. Smith, so straight to the surname. And informal, we'll go straight to the first name. The sign-off will also be different. Yours faithfully, Eli Howes. Yours sincerely, Eli, or all the best, Eli. The opener is also different. For formal and semi-formal letters, we're going to be short and direct. However, for informal letters, we're going to be longer and be more familiar. We're probably going to have a little bit of chit-chat. Something like, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a long time. Contractions are also a dividing point. So that's words like I'm or I'd or I'll. We don't tend to use contractions in formal letters. In semi-formal letters, we have some, and in formal, we have lots of contractions. Linking words are also different. So that's words like and, nevertheless, so, but. In formal letters, we're going to use more formal linking words, kind of like the ones that you would use in an essay. In semi-formal letters, we're going to have a mix of formal and informal linking words, and we're going to have more spoken style linking words for informal letters, things like and, so, but, also. Idioms. We won't use many idioms in formal letters, maybe none at all, but we would use them in semi-formal, and we will certainly have idioms in informal letters. So when I say idioms, I mean idioms and also phrasal verbs as well, so idiomatic language. The vocabulary will also be different. We're going to have formal vocabulary, formal-ish vocabulary, and informal, more spoken style vocabulary for informal letters. The question style is also different. In formal letters, you're going to be more direct, likewise with semi-formal. However, in informal letters, you're going to have more indirect, longer style questions. Finally, the punctuation is going to be slightly different. We don't tend to use exclamation marks in formal and semi-formal letters, but we would use them in informal letters. Let's write a formal letter together. You recently bought some new furniture online. You were told that the furniture would arrive within 5 working days, but it has been 2 weeks and it has still not arrived. You phoned the shop, but no action was taken. Write a letter to the shop manager. In the letter, explain that the furniture has not arrived. Describe what happened when you phoned the shop. Say what you would like the manager to do. So remember, our structure is always the same. We're going to start with the greeting. Then we're going to have the opener, which is the purpose of the letter. Then we're going to have the 3 bullet points in separate paragraphs, then the closer, and finally the sign-off. So let's start first with the greeting. Now, in this case, we're writing a formal letter. So we're going to have a greeting like, "Dear Sir or Madam." Then we move on to the opener, which is the purpose of the letter. Now, what I would recommend is to read through the question and work out what is the purpose of this letter. Now, I think the answer is here in the final bullet point. Say what you would like the manager to do. So let's include this in our opener. I'm writing to request a refund for an armchair that I purchased from your online store several weeks ago. Okay, we've got some very useful language here. I am writing to request. Now that's because this letter is a request letter. So we could say, I am writing to request. However, if the letter was more about an inquiry, we might say something like, I'm writing to inquire about. If we were asking for permission, then we could say something like, I am writing to request permission to. If you're looking for advice, then you could say something like, thank you for your letter requesting information about I hope the following advice will be of some help to you. Another common letter is an apology. I am writing to apologize for. So I would recommend that you learn some of these useful openers for typical and common letter types. They'll help you in the exam. Let's go back to our letter and we're going to look now at bullet point 1. So this bullet point says, explain that the furniture has not arrived. So let's do that. I bought this item during your super sale and I was informed that it would be arriving within 5 working days. This was particularly important for me because it was to be a present for my aunt. However, it has been 2 weeks and I am still waiting. Now, this paragraph has got some very useful language. We've got words like, I bought this item. So this item is a way to not repeat the word armchair over and over again. Then we've got was informed. So this is the passive form. Would be arriving. Great grammar there. We've also got linking words like however. Now you'll know however because you'll be writing it in your task 2 essays. Remember, the linking words that you use in your task 2 essays, you can also use in formal letters. Let's move on to bullet point 2. Describe what happened when you phoned the shop. I called your store last week and spoke to one of your customer assistants. He told me that my chair had already been shipped but was unable to provide me with a tracking number. When I asked to be transferred to the manager, he outright refused, claiming that they were busy. I find this service to be far below the standards that your store claims in its advertisements. So I called and spoke to your customer assistant. So we're using topic-specific vocabulary. It had already been shipped. Amazing advanced grammar here. This is the past perfect passive form. So someone had already shipped it. It had already been shipped. Wonderful. He was unable. So instead of saying he couldn't, we use was unable. Again, we're just showing a higher sophistication in our language. He outright refused. So again, we're showing more sophistication. We could say he said no, but we're making this more advanced by saying he outright refused. I find this far below the standards. We're getting a little bit emotional. We don't really need to say things like far below the standards, but we're kind of showing off here, and we're almost getting ourselves into a mindset where we're very annoyed about this armchair not arriving. Okay, let's look now at bullet point 3. Say what you would like the manager to do. I would like to express my dissatisfaction with the service I have received and request that you cancel the order. Additionally, I would appreciate a full refund, which includes postage fees. If the chair is on its way to my home, which I highly doubt, I shall be sending it right back to you. We're getting quite emotional now. I would like to express my dissatisfaction. A great chunk of language here. Instead of saying, I am angry or I am annoyed, I would like to express my dissatisfaction. So if you're writing a letter where you're unhappy about something, this is a great chunk of language to use. I request that you cancel the order. Again, we're showing the examiner that we know that we're making a request here. I request that you cancel the order. Additionally, so again, we're using a linking word that we might find in an essay. We've got however, we've also got additionally. Additionally, I would appreciate a full refund. Again, we've got typical language for this letter, a full refund. I shall be sending it right back to you. Wonderful language. Now we finally move on to the closer. So remember, the closer is going to reiterate to the person that you're sending to why it is that you've written to them and what you would like to do. Please reply to confirm the cancellation and refund at your earliest convenience. It's a little bit passive aggressive. There's some useful language here. So please reply to confirm the at your earliest convenience. This is a language chunk that you can learn now before you go to do your exam. And if you're writing a formal letter like this, then this is a great chunk of language you can put into your letter. Let's look at some other closers. So with requests, we've got please reply to confirm at your earliest convenience. If it's a permission, we might say something like, thank you for considering my request to. If we're looking for advice, we might say something like, I hope that you found these recommendations of use. Please do not hesitate to contact me should you have any further questions. If we're apologizing, then we would have something like, once again, I am sorry for any inconvenience caused. Brilliant. So these are all useful closers that you can take the time to learn now so that when it comes to your exam, you feel more confident. We're always going to put a sign off at the end of our letter. So in this case, it starts dear sir or madam. So we're going to use yours faithfully. Remember, when we have dear sir or madam, we end a letter with yours faithfully and then our full name. Here's our letter in its entirety. Now you'll notice at the beginning, we've got one sentence in the opener. When we look at bullet point 1, we've got 3 sentences. So that shows the examiner that we're developing this answer. Then we've got 4 sentences, 3 sentences, and finally just 1 sentence when we've got the closer. So in total, our word count is going to be 204 words, which is above 150 words, which is great. So there's certain things that the examiner is going to be looking for when they're marking a formal letter. Do you have an appropriate greeting and sign off? Do you have an appropriate opener and closer? Do you have no contractions in formal letters? If you have the occasional contraction, that's fine, but ideally you don't have many. Do you use formal linking words? Not many idioms or phrasal verbs? Not many intensifying adjectives or adverbs, polite when making requests and asking questions, and no exclamation marks. So let's look at our letter and check all these things. Do we have an appropriate greeting and sign off? Yes, we've got dear sir or madam and then yours faithfully. Do we have an appropriate opener and closer? Yes, we've got a nice short opener and a nice short closer. No contractions, that's correct. We don't have any contractions here. Remember, if you do have 1 or 2 or 3, that's okay, but ideally we don't have as many contractions as an informal letter. Do we use formal linking words? Yes, we do. We've got words like however, we've also got additionally. Not many idioms or phrasal verbs, not many intensifying adjectives or adverbs. So again, when you look at informal letters, you'll see that there are many more intensifying adjectives and adverbs. However, in this letter, we do have things like particularly important or outright refused or far below the standards. Polite when making requests and asking questions. Yes, in the opener, I'm writing to request a refund for an armchair that I purchased from your online store several weeks ago. That's very polite. And then we're making a request at the very end. Please reply to confirm the cancellation and refund at your earliest convenience. Nice and polite. And finally, no exclamation mark. So that's all good as well. Let's write an informal letter together. Here's the prompt. A friend you made while traveling abroad has written to ask you for advice about doing language classes in your area. You know about a local language school that might be suitable for him or her. Write a letter to your friend, and in the letter, tell your friend about the language school. Say why you think the language school would be suitable for him or her. Explain how to apply for the language school. So, as always, we're going to follow a set structure. We're going to have the greeting, the opener, the 3 bullet points, the closer, and then the sign-off. And we're going to start with the greeting. Now, because this is an informal letter, we know that because we're writing it to our friend, how are we going to start it? Well, we could say something like, Dear Sam. Perfect. So, dear, and then first name, and then a comma. Then we move on to the opener, which is the purpose of the letter. So, pause the video and decide what is the purpose of the letter. I think the answer is here. Your friend has written to ask you for advice. So you're almost giving your friend advice on something. So let's include that. Let's show the examiner that we understand that in our opener. Great to hear from you. I'm so excited that you're thinking about coming over to study Spanish. I'd be thrilled to give you some advice on finding a language school. Now, notice this opener is much longer than the opener for our formal or semi-formal letters. It's important to make a little bit of chit-chat, a little bit of, hey, how's it going? Great to hear from you in the opener, because it's an informal letter. You're writing to someone that you know well. Also, the purpose should also sound informal. It has to be something like, I'd be thrilled to give you some advice on finding a language school. So when it comes to writing the purpose, make sure that you maintain a familiar, friendly style of tone. Let's look at some useful language. Great to hear from you. I'm so excited that you're coming over. I'd be thrilled to give you some advice on. So if we're giving advice or a suggestion or a recommendation, we can use language like, I'd be thrilled to give you some advice on. If we're replying to a previous letter, you could say something like, thanks so much for your lovely letter. It was so nice to hear from you. If you're making an offer to your friend, you could say something like, I heard that you are da-da-da, and I wondered whether you wanted me to lend you a hand. So for example, I heard that you're moving home, and I wondered whether you wanted me to lend you a hand. Lend you a hand is a great idiom that we can use in informal letters. If you're giving news, you'll never guess what happened. Making arrangements. I thought I'd write to see if you fancy meeting up next week to go for some Vietnamese food. Okay, so let's move now on to bullet point 1. Tell your friend about the language school. I asked around about language schools and I think I found the best one. All of my friends seem to recommend International House. I haven't been there myself, but it gets a 5-star rating on Google and it's in a brilliant location, extremely close to the city centre. Check it out online when you get a chance. So I asked around, nice informal phrasal verb. I've. So again, we're already showing that we know to use contraction. Instead of I have, we're using I've. It's in a brilliant location. So we're using intensifying adjectives. A brilliant location. It's extremely close. More intensifying adjectives. You've got to check it out. Again, a phrasal verb that shows that this is an informal letter. Then we move on to bullet point 2. Say why you think the language school would be suitable for him or her. I think the school sounds about right for you. It's not far from where you'll be staying. You mentioned that you're staying in Gracia, right? Well, International House is in Trafalgar, which is only a 15-minute walk away. Also, they have a course, Spanish for Business Purposes, that apparently prepares you for job interviews. I presume that would work for you. Sounds about right for you. Nice colloquial language. Your nice contraction, right? So notice the way we're asking indirect kind of question tag questions. Well, so notice well is the kind of linking word that we would use if we were speaking. We can use these linking words in our informal letters. Also, a very typical linking word for informal letters. If we were writing a formal letter, we might use additionally or in addition. If we're writing an informal letter, we're going to use also. I presume that would work for you. Work for you is another phrasal verb. Let's move on now to bullet point 3. Explain how to apply for the language school. If you're keen, I'll send you some of the application details. I looked over their website and it seems that their courses start on the 1st of every month. It said that you need to apply a week before each course starts. apparently it's just a 15-minute phone call. So you should be able to do that before you come over. Now, I love the beginning of this paragraph. If you're keen. Keen means motivated or interested in something. It's a very informal word that we would use typically in spoken language. So as a result, we can use it in our informal letter. If you're keen, I'll send you some of the application details. I looked over their website, so a phrasal verb, and it seems like more informal language. And then so, again, so is a linking word that we would use in spoken English. If we were writing a formal letter or writing an essay, we might use a linking word like as a result instead. Okay, so once we've looked at all 3 bullet points, we haven't finished, we need our closer, just like our formal and semi-formal letters. I'm really excited that you're coming over and can't wait to see you. If you need any more help, just drop me a line. I'm really excited that you're coming over. If you need any more help, just drop me a line. This is useful language that we can learn before we go to do our IELTS writing test. I'm really excited that you're coming over. I can't wait to see you. If you need any more help, just drop me a line. So let's look at some more useful language for our closers. So for advice, suggestions, or recommendations, we've got this one. If you need any more help, just drop me a line. If we're replying to a previous letter, it was so nice to hear from you. Let's continue to stay in touch. If we're making an offer, anyway, please get back to me and let me know what I can do. Giving news, please write back and let me know what's been going on with you! Exclamation mark. If we're making arrangements, anyway, write back and let me know if you fancy it. Now, we haven't finished our letter. We need to write the sign-off. So how we're going to finish an informal letter? Well, we're going to say all the best and then a first name, or speak soon and then a first name, or see you soon and their first name. You can choose, but just remember you need to make sure it sounds informal and don't forget that comma. So here's our letter in its entirety. At the beginning we have 2 sentences, then 4 sentences, then 4 sentences, then 4 sentences, and then 2 sentences. So as a result, an informal letter is actually typically a little bit longer. This one is 238 words. So remember, our formal letter is around 200, and this informal letter is around 238 words. So when it comes to these informal letters, we need to make sure that we've got an appropriate greeting and sign-off, that we have appropriate opener and closer, that we have contractions in informal letters, we've got informal linking words, we use idioms and phrasal verbs, intensifying adjectives and adverbs, informal style for questions and requests, and we're going to throw in some exclamation marks as well. So let's go through this letter and make sure that we've got everything in order. Do we have an appropriate greeting and sign off? Yes, we've got Dear Sam, that's nice and informal, just dear and then the first name, and then we've got all the best, comma, and then first name as well. Do we have an appropriate opening and closer? Yes, we've got an opener with a little bit more chit chat, and we've got a closer that's also informal in style. Do we have contractions? Yes, we have lots of contractions. You'll notice that in formal letters we may have 1 or 2 contractions, in semi-formal maybe 3 or 4, but in informal letters we're going to have lots of contractions. Do we use informal linking words? Yes, we have words like and, but. What else do we have? Well, also, so. And if you look back to the formal letters, we had words like however, in addition, additionally. So yes, there's a big difference in the linking words that we use. Do we use idioms and phrasal verbs? Yes, we do. We've got words like coming over, asked around, check it out, sounds about right, works for you, looked over, drop me a line. Lots of idioms and phrasal verbs in informal letters. Intensifying adjectives and adverbs. Now, again, remember, in the formal letters, we had 1 or 2, but in informal letters, let's see how many we've got. It's great to hear from you. I'm so excited that you're thinking about coming over. I'd be thrilled. Okay, we've got so many: best, brilliant, extremely, only a 15-minute walk. So many good intensifying adjectives and adverbs. We've also got an informal style for questions and requests. You mentioned that you're considering Gracia, right? So using that kind of question tag at the end, that's very informal in style. So you can put one of these in your letter. If you need any more help, just drop me a line. Very casual, very familiar. Do we use exclamation marks? Yes, we've got great to hear from you, exclamation mark. So we're not going to put exclamation marks in the formal or semi-formal letters, but we would put 1, possibly 2 in an informal letter. Time for us to write a semi-formal letter. So who would we write a semi-formal letter to? We're going to write it to people that we know, but we don't know well. For example, a university professor, a manager, a work colleague perhaps, maybe your children's teacher, possibly your landlord if you're renting an apartment. Let's look at one together. You work for a large international company. Your company has recently opened a new branch in another country and is looking for members of staff to be based there for a period of time. Write a letter to your manager. In your letter, explain why you would be suitable to work in the new office. Say why this transfer will be beneficial to you and the company, and describe what you will do to prepare for your transfer. Okay, remember, again, we're going to follow that same structure. We've got our greeting, our opener, our 3 bullet points, our closer, and then our sign off. It's always the same. And of course, we're going to start with our greeting. So what is an appropriate greeting? Well, we're writing to our manager, so it's someone that we know. So I would recommend that we use their surname. So we say something like, Dear Mr. Lewis, or Dear Miss Lewis if it's a woman, or Dear Mrs. Lewis if we know that they're married. In the IELTS exam, often it'll say something like Dear ... comma, and then you need to decide whether you're going to use their first name or surname. Now, the opener, the purpose of the letter. Read through this and decide what is the purpose of this semi-formal letter that we're writing. I think it's here. Your company has recently opened a new branch in another country and is looking for members of staff to be based there for a period of time. Okay, so we're kind of applying for this particular role. I'm writing to express my interest in the opportunity to be temporarily based in the new Spanish office. I would be grateful if you would consider me for this role. Notice we're short and to the point. As soon as they read this opener, they know what the purpose of this letter is. It's so that you can apply for this new role in the Spanish office. Let's look at some useful language. I am writing to express my interest in. It's really worth learning some useful openers before your exam. If we're writing a request like this one, I'm writing to request. An inquiry, I'm writing to inquire about. Permission, I'm writing to request permission to. Advice, thank you for your letter requesting information about. Apology, I'm writing to apologize for. Bullet point 1. Explain why you would be suitable to work in the new office. I believe that I would be a suitable candidate for the new office for 2 reasons. First of all, I have a good command of Spanish, having previously worked for Spanish organizations. Secondly, as I don't have any dependents, I'm able to be flexible regarding the date of departure and return. I believe that I would be. Notice the way we're using quite formal language. I believe that I would be. So instead of saying I am, I believe that I would be. I believe that I would be a suitable candidate. So suitable candidate, a great chunk of language, not just a good person, a suitable candidate. First of all, okay, great. So we've got a linking word that we might see in an essay, and that's typical for these formal and semi-formal letters. We're trying to make it very clear. First of all, I have a good command of Spanish. I'm not just saying I speak Spanish well, I'm saying I have a good command of Spanish. More formal, appropriate to this letter. I don't have any dependents. So dependents are children or maybe like a spouse or a partner. We then move on to bullet point 2. Explain why this transfer will be beneficial to you and the company. Now, if you only mention yourself, you're going to get a much lower score. You need to talk about why it's good for you and the company as well. Having worked for Johnson & Johnson for 11 years, permitting me to transfer to the Spanish branch will ensure that the new offices are kept in line with our current standards and practices. I would also hope that the experience working in a foreign office will give me a better understanding of different operational procedures. So we're covering both how the company is going to benefit, which is Johnson & Johnson, and then how also you will benefit, which is by learning different operational procedures. We've also got great language in this paragraph. We've got words like ensure. So instead of saying to make sure, we've got ensure, a great academic sounding word. In line with our current standards. I would also hope we finally move on to bullet point 3. Describe what you will do to prepare for your transfer. In preparation for the transfer, I'll make sure that all remaining tasks are completed. I'll also ensure that all my current responsibilities are handled by Veronica Albright and that I am kept up to speed with any developments in our American office. When you're writing these letters, it's almost like you've got to really pretend that you're this person. Imagine this, parallel life where you are working in an American office and Veronica Albright is going to take over your responsibilities and you're going to move to Spain. You've got to really use your imagination. I'll make sure and ensure. So again, these are synonyms, make sure and ensure. And we're not saying ensure twice in the same sentence. We use make sure and then ensure. Kept up to speed. So a very useful, appropriate phrasal verb to use in a semi-formal letter. Now remember, after we've looked at all 3 bullet points, we need to have a closer, which again has to be short and to the point. Thank you for considering my request and let me know if you require any more information. So let's look at some useful language here. So that's for a request. Please reply to confirm the at your earliest convenience. If it's permission, thank you for considering my request too. If it's advice, I hope that you found these recommendations of use. Please do not hesitate to contact me should you have any further questions. If it's an apology, once again, I am sorry for any inconvenience caused. Now, have we finished our letter? No, we need the sign-off. How are we going to finish our letter to our manager? I would say to use your first and second name, your family name. Yours sincerely, David Hughes. If you have dear and then a surname, you often have yours sincerely and then your full name. Here's our letter in its entirety. We've got 2 sentences at the beginning, then we've got 3 sentences, then 2 sentences, then 2 sentences, and then just 1 sentence. So in total, we've got 187 words. This is above 150 words. Great. Now, remember the examiner will be looking for certain things when they're looking at a semi-formal letter. Do you have the appropriate greeting and sign-off? Do you have an appropriate opener and closer? Do you have maybe contractions but not too many, so just occasional contractions? Do you have a mix of formal and informal linking words? Remember, it's okay to use idioms and phrasal verbs, but we're not going to have as many as informal letters. We're going to have intensifying adjectives and adverbs, but again, not as many as informal letters. We're going to be polite when making requests and asking questions, and we don't have any exclamation marks. So let's look at our letter. Do we have an appropriate greeting and sign-off? Yes, we've got Dear Mr. Lewis, and then we've got Yours sincerely, David Hughes. Do we have an appropriate opener and closer? Yes, we've got a nice short opener, and then we've got a closer which says, thank you for considering my request, and let me know if you require any more information. Occasional contractions? Yes, well, at the beginning we've got I'm. We could also say I am. The occasional contractions are fine. Also in the middle we've got I don't. We could just say I do not. And in the final paragraph we've got I'll. In fact, we've even got that twice. So we do have some contractions here, but not as many as an informal letter. A mix of formal and informal linking words. Yes, we've got phrases like first of all, secondly. We've also got also and. So yes, we've got those formal and those informal linking words. It's okay to use idioms and phrasal verbs. So we've got phrases like kept in line or kept up to speed with. These are idioms that are appropriate for formal and semi-formal letters. Not many intensifying adjectives or adverbs. I don't think we've got any in here. And then we're polite when making requests and asking questions. So let me know if you require any more information. So we're not saying, tell me if you have a question. It's please let me know if you require any more information. We don't have any exclamation marks. Basically, you can see the difference between writing these formal, informal, and semi-formal letters. The important thing for you at this stage is to be writing as many as possible before your final exam. You basically want to just have written so many that as soon as you see the question in your IELTS writing test, you immediately feel familiar. You've already got chunks of language that you can use, and maybe you have even written a similar type of letter before. So best of luck with all of your studies, and I'll see you in the next lesson.